Well, good evening. Wow, anytime I come to do these presentations or speeches or whatever you want to call them, it's always tough to follow the act of the guild presentation before I ever get started. So it's just really impressive to see all the quilts, and it's just really, really awesome. You guys all do fantastic work, and I never get tired of seeing them. So I think you should all give yourselves a hand for that. That's really, really incredible. Like Cecilia said, first of all, thank you, Cecilia, for ever even contacting me about coming here and speaking to you guys tonight. And I live in Fort Payne, Alabama, which is not too far down the road. We're basically neighbors. And what's going on over here, this is just kind of a slideshow. I'm not speaking off of this. This is just kind of it'll scroll through, and you can kind of just see some past pieces that I've done in the past, and they're so that's just, when you get tired of looking at me, you can just look over there. So there you go. Well, steel quilts. That's it. The story is really kind of crazy. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, Grady Hospital, and I got moved to Lookout Mountain, Alabama, not long thereafter. My grandmother moved me back to Lookout. My grandmother was not a typical grandmother. She didn't really cook that well. She didn't sew at all. She didn't quilt. Actually, nobody in my family quilts. They just don't. It's just never something that anybody ever did. And so I was never exposed to that growing up as a kid or even an adolescent, or it was never anything that I ever knew anything about. But when I graduated high school, I went to Sand Rock High School, by the way. That's my alma mater. It's Lookout Mountain. I went in the Navy, and I kind of went around the world for a little while because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with myself. And what happened is, when I got out of the Navy, I started working in the salt mills, because Fort Payne is a salt kind of capital, used to be salt capital of the world. And so I started doing that, and I just was never satisfied with it, and I never went to college or anything, but I started in the steel business. I started selling steel, and that's what I done. So once I found my niche in that, I did it for 12 years. I was a successful salesperson, traveled around the whole Southeast. That's where my territory was. And something happened on August 2009 that changed my life forever, and that was the economy crashed. I mean, anybody that's ever had any kind of decent job or good job knows what it's like for your income to go to basically next to nothing in just a split second. So that's what happened. So I told myself that I wasn't going to depend on anyone else for my income anymore after that. So what I started doing was, I'd always had a love as a child, even of just driving around wherever we was going, and I'd always look around at these barns that were all falling down on the side of the roads, and that just always intrigued me, and that was always something that I kept with me forever. And I didn't even know that at the time. This all kind of put all this into motion, just those feelings that I didn't know that I had, the things that I really loved, and they were simple things. And that's the whole point of all this is it's about simple and not being perfect, because I am the epitome of imperfection, actually. But what happened is, I started tearing down barns, and I just started doing it. I didn't care. I didn't care about how much money I was making or anything. I just did it for the love of the fact of taking something that was going to rot or go away and just take it down and put it somewhere and do something with the materials. That's kind of where all that happened. So that was first part of 2010, I guess that I tore down the first barn that I ever tore down. And so I started piling all these materials up, and I'd build some stuff, and I'm not even a carpenter by any means, but I just built some simple stuff And one day my mother, she works for some people in our area that they had Percheron horses, like these huge draft horses is who she worked for. And they were selling a horse to someone in Iowa. And they couldn't go because of some reason, so they asked my mother to drive the big dually truck and pull the big trailer with the huge horse in it and all the way to Iowa. And she said that she couldn't do that. She didn't feel comfortable with it. So she asked me to do it and go with her. I drove, she passengered. And she knew that I was into the barns, of course, and that was knowledge that everybody knew that I was doing that. And so as we was driving our way through, say, Illinois and that areas, she would point out, oh, look at that barn over there and this barn over there. And it was all great, and I loved looking at them. And then somewhere around, I'm not even sure exactly where, but it was about middle Illinois, right before you can shoot up to Chicago, or you can take the left and go into Iowa. Somewhere in that, a little bit south of there is where I saw the first barn, and that's the only reason I even noticed the barn quilts, basically, is because I was tearing down barns previously, so I was looking at those things. And she said, what is that? And I said, I don't know, I've never seen nothing like that before. It's awesome. It was kind of off the road. It was just a pattern, and really it was just a fleeting thing. I didn't see another thing, and it was getting kind of dark, and we still had a few hours to go to where we were going. So the next morning, we do our deal. We deliver the horse late at night, and we get into our motel, and we wake up early, and we start driving back. And we were middle ways through Iowa. We were, I can't remember the town that we even went to, but we were pretty far into Iowa, or at least middle ways, and then we went north a little bit. And so on the way home, they were everywhere. I mean, when the light of day come around and we were driving, these things were everywhere, these barn quilts, and they were huge, and they were all over the place. And that's where this process started, not the steel yet, but that's where this process started. And so it was the winter of 2011, so it was probably about, well, for us it wasn't winter, but for them it still was. So it was probably about March, maybe March-ish, somewhere in there. And I never thought another thing about it. I just thought they were beautiful. I stopped right before we left out of the state of Iowa. I stopped at a rest center and got some literature, like a map of the state and this and that and the other. And I just put them in my souvenir drawer, and I didn't think about it again. Well, when you tear down barns or do anything like that outside during the summer, especially around here, it's pretty hot. And I just had enough of tearing down barns for the summer. I was done. I finished one, and I could have started another one. I just decided that I wasn't going to until it got cooler weather. And I was digging through my stuff within about a week of me doing that. I was digging through some stuff in my drawer, and I found that map of the Iowa map. And they actually have, at the bottom of the state of Iowa, the official state of Iowa map, they actually have pictures of barn quilts underneath it. And I was like, oh yeah, those were really cool. So I started looking them up online and just kind of seeing things, just looking at the different ones, and I was looking and seeing how they done them. And so I started doing them. Like August of that year, I started painting them. That's traditional, is to paint the patterns, the single block patterns on, whatever size that you want to do it on. But that's traditionally the way that they're done. Okay, so I bet I done 30 in a month. I mean, I did one every day, it seemed like. I was doing one a day, and I couldn't get enough of it. I just couldn't, there was something about it. It was just something I'd never experienced before. Making these lines and painting these pieces, and whenever you put a frame around them, I mean, and I just give them away, and I give them all away. I probably painted 45 throughout the rest of the year total, from the time I started till probably January 2012. But I never liked it. I never really liked the painting part of it, because it was you had to be so perfect, and I'd have to, like, when you tape the line off, and then you peel the paint off, and then it'd get kind of in the cracks, and you have to go back and like paint. And one thing I've always done, I've got ADD, so I never like to do like regular colors, like a blue, I wasn't satisfied with it. I have to mix it. You know, I want to find different colors and different, and what would happen is sometimes is I'd have to go back and touch them up and I didn't have that color anymore. So, and that one actually in the top left is a painted piece. That was the last painted that I done, and then the bottom right, it'll circle back around, but the bottom right was the one that, the first piece that I done with metal incorporated into it. So I was at my sister's one day, and I'd given her and my brother-in-law some metal because they wanted to do a project. They wanted to do some, because I'd give stuff away. I'd just give wood, and somebody wanted to do a project, do a wall out of reclaimed wood. I just, you know, whatever, I just give it to them. And my sister, I'd done that with them. They redone their house, and they done a nice reclaimed wall, and then they wanted some metal tin from the barn, you know, to kind of accent and everything. So there were several pieces of tin left over, and we were just standing there talking in their driveway one day, and I seen the pieces of tin sticking out from behind their house, and I was thinking, about a month before I saw that, I was thinking, I want to do something different. I want to paint them. There's got to be some other way to do it. And so I thought about a piece of Luan, you know, like a thin piece of, you know, plywood, thin, and I was going to buy a scroll saw, and I was going to scroll the patterns out and then like glue them somehow. And I thought, no, it's too much. I don't want to do all that. And I saw the tin, and I was like, I mean, it hit me. It just knocked me down. And I said, I'm taking that with me, and if y'all need some more, you just let me know, but I'm taking that tin with me today. And so I went right home, and I did my first steel quilt. And barn quilts was, you know, that's the traditional name for them, but I've been doing it now this is the third year that I've done it, and I've probably done maybe in the 180 pieces since 2012, since I first started since I've done my first one. I've probably done about that many. I'm not really exactly sure, but and it just made sense to me. The steel, and I hand cut everything. Actually I didn't bring them in. I was going to. The tools that I use, which are very primitive, they're just it's a pair of big scissors, straight sheared scissors, and then I use an awl because I have to pre-punch, because everywhere there's a tack. When I first started, I was wasting a lot of tacks because I was just trying to punch right through the metal. I would just take the tack and I would just punch it right through, and it would bend or whatever. And so I finally figured out that every piece, so I hand cut the pieces, and then pre-punch each piece with a hole before I put it on there, and then I lay them down. And then one advantage that gives me with the tacks is when I punch through on the backside, it has like a burr comes out, because the metal don't leave, it just displaces the metal. So I actually have a spot where I can tack it, like, tap it down, and then it holds to where I want it to hold. So then it all just made sense, and I just went crazy. I started doing whatever I wanted to do. I'd research. I had this one page that had like 60, well, probably not that many, probably about 30 patterns, different patterns on there. And I did every one of them. I did them all. And I just couldn't get enough. So my first speaking engagement that somebody ever asked me to speak at, it was at a local guild. It was probably about 30 people were there at the time. And they give me a gift for coming and speaking. And it was, oh man, I know y'all know. I think I'm getting it confused with Cecilia's name. Burton. Her name's Burton. The Underground Railroad. Burns, I'm sorry. Eleanor Burns, okay. So I got that, they give me that book because they had just, as a guild, they had done that series, they had just done it. So they give me the book. And so I started looking through those, and I never really thought about, because I don't have a background in even knowing what quilting was or anything, but I started seeing that they actually have, a lot of these patterns, they have meanings. I mean, they actually have history, they have meanings, a lot of them. Just like I learned today, or sometime I looked it up. I don't think I'd done that one, but the wandering foot, one that I've done in the past. I just learned just recently that meant something about the homesteading, and it's probably on there. So it got a red background. It's in this slideshow, but I done wandering foot, and I've found out just within the last week or so that had something to do with the homesteading of the frontier land, like that, the Wandering Foot, and it was something about boys couldn't sleep underneath them or something. It was bad luck if boys slept underneath the Wandering Foot. Anyway, just quirkiness like that, it was awesome and amazing. But another thing that the Underground Railroad did for me was it really brought me to an attention that to like racism, things like that, you know, how prevalent that is, and honestly, and it's something that I'm trying to speak more about because I think it's important, especially in our culture, the way that you know, I feel like in some ways we're probably more divided now than or at least in my lifetime, I feel like in some ways we're actually more divided now than we were in the past, potentially, but I really learned because I had some issues on my own of how I was raised, potentially, you know, and like the school I went to, an all-white school, you know, and so by getting that book and looking those patterns and reading the history, and then not just reading what she had wrote, not just what Eleanor had wrote, but actually going back and actually reading real history behind these quilts and like how important they were to these people that had no idea how to, you know, we learned Alabama history, but we didn't learn the plight of the slave. You know, I mean, we didn't learn really that. And so it actually took me, I placed myself into that situation the best I could. I tried to put myself in that situation. I thought, what would it be like to actually be like that? You know, I'd never had that awareness, and that was odd. You know, it just kind of woke me up, and it just kind of told me that, you know, that was just had to be rough for those folks, you know, and my heart started going out to them, and it really brought me, you know, just made me more aware of that situation. And so that's really what I've probably learned the most out of this whole process is, you know, we're not all that different. I mean, we're not all that different, quilters or non-quilters, or, you know, it don't really matter. We're not. And for somebody like myself that had no track in life, basically, just because I never really focused on anything except for what was going on right now. That was all the way I've always been. Not that I wasn't raised differently, but that's just the way I was. I just was that kind of person. And for me to even be doing what I'm able to do right now, and to be able to stand in front of you people tonight and to show you things that I've done, this is nothing about myself, actually. I mean, this is all about transitioning, and it was a life-changing experience, really, for me. Where a lot of people that deal with quilts, I mean, you know, you guys have probably been mostly raised by it, or, you know, raised in it. So the majority of people probably watched their mothers or grandmothers or whoever sew, and I never had that, and so I never had any real preconceived notions of quilting. I guess that's why I'm more, you know, I'm just amazed by it, and I'm really in awe of it. To see all the beautiful patterns that you guys do, and to see all the intricacies, and that's just tremendous. And it's just really overwhelming at times, because we all kind of have our own individual journey that we walk, and I know I have, and I do, but we also, you know, we're all tied together through a common thread, and that's really what it's all about to me. And quilters and non-quilters, I do this and I do steel, and it's nothing like what you guys do. Actually, you know, physically it's not, but I really admire the whole process, because the donating to I had the opportunity to meet a woman that was, I think she's from the Huntsville chapter of the Quilts of Valor, down in Collinsville at the Collinsville Quilt Walk. I think she was from Huntsville, or right around this area somewhere maybe. But, you know, I can't do that. I can't donate one of these to that. I mean, they're not going to cover up with a piece of wood, but just to see that whole process, and I want to be a part of all that, you know. And so I try to, like my sister and brother-in-law, they have a nonprofit organization. I constantly donate stuff to them. If anybody wants a piece donated for something, I usually do it. I mean, if they ask me, I do it, you know, because it's not about me. I just want people to see a different kind of way to do something, And that if you really have any want to do anything, you can do it, you know, and that's what it's all about, is for me, is that I never thought when I first started doing this that anything would ever happen, and now, you know, we are where we are. So we are where we, I guess that's right. We are where we are. Okay. But I just really appreciate being here tonight, and thanks so much for allowing, Connie, would you please come up? I made this for you guys. It's one of my favorite patterns, the Milky Way pattern, and I wrote a little note on the back, and I wanted to give that to Connie, and
Thanks to the Heritage Quilters Quilt Guild of Huntsville for having the Steel Quilt Company speak. We were thrilled to have this opportunity. Good luck and best wishes.
so I don't know where you put that in here, but you just always, maybe put it on the front of your podium or something. So anyway, I guess that pretty much wraps up what I come to say, and thanks for being such a gracious crowd. And these are, you know, if you guys want to purchase one of these, they're available to be purchased. Suni, I want to also thank my assistant, Suni. She's awesome. I couldn't be here tonight without her. And then my production manager, Robert, in the background, he tries to make me look as good as I possibly can all the time. So thanks, everyone. And if you guys got any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. So
do you have a website that people could go and pick them out? Do you ship them?
I really don't have a website. I really do basically everything through Facebook. I'm in the process, and that's why I have Suni now. She's going to really help me get into that. People's been asking me for well over a year, probably more like 2 years, you know. And the thing is, I'm kind of close guarded about it, just because it's hard to explain to people what this is, what I do, or whatever. Yeah, and so it's just hard to talk about. So I really don't even talk about it a lot. I mean, a lot of people have talked. I've heard people mention the Steel Quilt Company in conversation that didn't even know that I was the person that done the quilt. You know what I mean? And that's just the way I am, and I probably need to do a little bit better about that. But I also don't want it to turn into a chore, and that, you know, at the same time, I want to keep it. I want to keep it, you know, I have a full-time job. I work 45 hours a week, you know, regular job, and then this is what I do in my spare time. So right now, I'm transitioning into doing the Steel Quilt Company full-time. That's my goal. So, and that's where Suni and Robert come in, and that's where we're going to go down the road. But Facebook, primarily the Steel Quilt Company on Facebook for now, is the best way to look up anything. All these pictures that you saw, these pieces are there. There's several more pictures on there as well. And then all my contact information is on there. So, you know, not many times do you get to, I like to be available to people. You know, I mean, if they want to call me personally, my cell number's on there. So if you want to call me personally and talk to me about a piece or anything like that, that's fine. You're totally welcome to. I usually don't answer the phone if it's a number that I don't have already in my contacts list, but feel free to leave a message, because I check them every day, my messages. So, you know, if that's something you want to do, then that's awesome. And I will have a address. Well, I try to go, what I generally do is I go to Lowe's or Home Depot and I buy the mist tints. Is usually what I do. And then, so I have a plethora of colors of all kinds. And then I just kind of just pour them together and I mix them together until I find something. And I do have a color wheel though, that I kind of go by, that way I see like what goes together.
We call them our stash.
There you go. I've got fat quarters galore. They're just liquid. And the tin. Well, it's actually what I buy is I buy exterior latex paint. I do a Kills coat, and then I do at least 2 coats of the color paint. And they're fine for outside. I don't use exterior grade plywood because I don't like the feel of the when I tack into it. It don't grip it as good as the other. So I do protect it with that kind of stuff. So they are suitable for outdoors, but if anybody wanted an outdoor piece, I'd rather make one specifically for outdoors. I mean, even though they'll last just fine, they'll last fine, but the tin that I use is actually just the regular old barn tin, and it's 2 foot wide, and it's got a rib down the center, and then it has 2 ribs on each end, and these are about 10 inches of flat area in between. So you got 2 ribs, and then you got 9 inches of flat, then you got one single rib, and then you have 9 inches of flat, then you have 2 more ribs. So it's a total of 24 inches is what the piece is. And I have a pair of, the only thing that I use that's electric is it attaches to my drill, and it's just a pair of shears that it cuts the ribs off, and then I end up with however long the tin is, a 9-inch wide by however long flat piece of metal. And then I have those stacked in patterns, like how, kind of way you guys do that, I guess. So like, like all this stuff, this is just a pattern this was a piece of tin at one time, just a piece of tin that covered the roof, and it had the rust spots on it, and I kind of use that as my color palette. So I have it separated into different textures, I guess, of rust. Ma'am?
Do you paint these or just the
tin.
rust?
I paint the backgrounds. I don't like painting the tin, actually. I mean, if somebody asks me to, I do. I've done it. It's just the rust pattern. This is all the rust pattern. That's But I do paint the tin sometimes. I only do it like I said, if somebody asks me to do it, I will. But generally, I like to use just the rust itself as the colors, and then match it with an appropriate background. And then all the frames everything on the frames are very simple frames. I can do more complex frames if somebody wants one, but I just do a simple frame, and all this is off of reclaimed barn wood that comes out of the barns. I just finished one. Probably 2 weeks ago, I finished one, and I've got so much wood that I hope I don't have to do another one for a while. Because I'll be 41 years old this year, while that may not be very old, but whenever you're 25 feet up in the air walking on rickety, stuff, you start thinking about it a little bit more, because you get disabled if all that stuff. So anyway, I've got enough stuff so I don't have to do a barn for a while, I hope. Question? Yes, ma'am.
What's the largest one you've done?
The largest one that I've done so far is a 4x4. Up in Iowa, they do 8x8s, and they do huge ones. But 4x4 is about my comfort zone. And there's not much stuff here that you can really put much more than a 4x4 on, I don't think. But I've not done anything bigger, but 4x4 is fairly common. I do basically 4x4, 3x3 is a popular size. I just did one for the town of Whitehall, Tennessee, which is 30 miles outside of Nashville, west of Nashville. And my son, my 10-year-old son, which he's in one of these pictures, he's actually got a piece that he entered into the county fair and got first place and best of show in the county fair. So he's a quilter, but in a different way. And he's totally involved. Anybody that knows a steel quilt company knows my son Will. He's prevalent in everything that I do. So he just couldn't be here tonight, but there he is. His name's Will. Yes, ma'am.
So how did you start from a block you've seen in a book, and it says, this is an 8-inch block, and you're going to translate it to a 36-inch square piece? How do you work with graph paper, or what do you do?
Sometimes I do use graph paper, but I've gotten pretty good at just, like my vision has gotten to where I can cast these multitudes of squares onto a piece, and then I can kind of almost break it down into, sometimes I do have to graph it, but most of the time I pretty much can do it in my mind, pretty quick, which is amazing for me because I have no mechanical ability whatsoever, honestly. But it's interesting. I can just do that. Now, sometimes what I really would like to start doing more of is like you guys, have the quilts there and it's the pattern over and over. I just have, all I can really do with these sizes is, I could do it on more, but I want to start doing more larger pieces, to where they're like a 4x8 sheet of plywood and just make a quilt like you guys would probably, just repeat the pattern continuously, over that. I'd really like to do that. I've done it on, like the double wedding rings and the the drunkard's path, which is my favorite pattern to do, the drunkard's path. It's the same pattern block repeated continuously, but that's about the only ones that I do. There's not many that really they allow me to do that in that space. But I am restricted on widths. Like I said, the metal is 9 inches wide by however long, so the length don't matter, but the width matters because I can only go up to 9 inches, and I don't like to piece like that. The one that was on, that was the North Star. Well, there's a variation. I do my own little variations of the patterns. I don't necessarily stick right to it. So this is also a North Star pattern that I kind of just come up with, but that's actually about as wide as I can go right there. That middle piece, that's 9 inches. That's a 9-inch square, and then I just cut the pattern out to fit. So that's my limitations.
Are you saying you don't measure anything?
No, I mean I measure things out when I cut them. I think she had asked is if I have to graph everything out, or if I can, how I come, like she was saying, from an 8-inch block and turn it into a 36. I just kind of try to, if I can throw those blocks onto the pattern and just figure it out from there, I can do that. Or sometimes I might have to use the graph paper just to see my measurements. But yeah, I do definitely use. What I do is I usually, like when I'm using the front of the metal, then I'll flip it over to the back, and then I just use a regular old square, just a square, and then which is on that it's 8 inches by 11 inches. If I use the widest part of it, that's or maybe, anyway, it's 8 or 9 inches, and that's the way I cut everything out into squares out of that, and then start over.
Do you have a shop that people can come to look for people?
I don't have a shop yet. That's kind of the 2015 plan, is to have, by August, my goal, I got a 6-month goal, and it's, I didn't make any New Year's resolutions. Last year was fantastic for me as far as everything going. I think I spoke 7, 8 places, and, I probably did 30 pieces last year, and I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's just hard, to let go of a job that you have, and you got to pay bills and all that. But I know that I can do the same thing in this. So I didn't have a New Year's resolution for 2015, only that, and this is kind of funny, but somebody asked me about New Year's resolutions, and I told them I just don't set myself up for failure anymore. But I said, the only thing I want to happen is I want 2014 just to slingshot. You know how whenever you got to shoot a satellite out into interstellar space, and you got to get that whip around Jupiter, and it kind of whips you around. I said, that's what I want 2015 to be. I just want it to come back around and take a spin and just shoot on out. So far, I've got great people that's, helping me right now. And so hopefully I'll be doing this full time in August of this year. That's my plan. Maybe before, but by August. And then hopefully the shop situation works itself out. I'm looking for a displaced place in Fort Payne or somewhere. I wish I knew the place. If I had my phone, I could probably tell you, but I have a high school friend of mine. His name is Shannon Shaw, and I'll email Cecilia with it. Maybe she could say something later on. But he opened up a upscale consignment shop somewhere here in Huntsville, and he's asked me to put my pieces in there. And so I don't know when that'll be, but I'll let you know the name of it, and you can give it out to the members. So that's something that like Area 61 in Chattanooga. I've got some pieces there. I need to revamp that whole deal, and then Pepper Place, Charlie Thigpen's Garden Gallery in Birmingham. He's going to get some pieces here before the spring, and then I'll have this consignment deal over here. Well, it's not. He'll have them somewhere here in Huntsville, so I'll let you know. But that's about really it for as far as the spreading out. Mentone, they're covered with it. I haven't really talked about the Barn Quilt Trail. Am I on time? 5 minutes past. One thing I wanted to do, once I saw that and I learned about the Barn Quilt Trail, the whole Iowa deal, and learned about that whole process of the Barn Quilt Trail, my goal is to establish a Northeast Alabama Barn Quilt Trail here somewhere. I mean, it probably originated in Mentone, I hope. And we already have myself, and then I have another person, he paints the quilt squares. I do the metal, he does the painting, but we've probably got, I don't know, probably 30 pieces up in Mentone, just around the area, all around the area. And so what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to do an online brochure just to kind of, and basically what it will be a GPS coordinates. That way you can pull them up on your phone and you can just go to them, and you don't necessarily need to have a map. You know, I mean, there will be a map available, but you also have the GPS coordinates. You can just plug them in and just take you right there. So right now, that's what we're trying to figure out. We're looking at a map of the area and where we are, where I have pieces at already, and then we're trying to make legs of it. That way it's not like people that's not familiar with Mentone, it's easy to get turned around in that area. So, but that's the ultimate goal of the whole deal, is to establish Barn Quilt Trail, and hopefully, I'd love to see it come up through Huntsville. They say, I posted one time, and there's a woman that does Barn Quilt Trails of America, Cindy Perrone, Susan Perrone, that's her last name. But she kind of fell into it on accident. She went around with her husband on a trip. They both retired, and they went on a trip across the country, and they started in the Midwest, and they shot straight across, and they started seeing the barn quilts, kind of like what I did. Well, she started just taking pictures of them. It wasn't anything that was planned. And she ended up getting published, and now she has a book out. And so anyway, so I threw out there one day, I put something up on Facebook about help, let's get together, let's do some kind of I did a community presentation, and it was supposed to be for that, to kind of get people attention and aware of it. And I posted that let's be Alabama's first recognized barn quilt trail. Well, Susan Perrone, she messaged me back and said, no, you won't be the first on the trail. You won't be the first one in Alabama, because the G's Bend Quilters are actually on the barn quilt trail. Although they don't do that. They're on the barn quilt trail, but they are quilters. I mean, they're not barn quilters. So I guess that means that we'll just be the first recognized real barn quilt trail, in the state of Alabama. And that don't take a lot. All you got to do is have there's very little criteria. Ma'am? First, and what I want to do, I want to incorporate artists from other areas. I mean, I can't do it all by myself, and I don't want to do it all by myself. I want to have people from different areas and different mediums. As long as they can do a quilt square in a 4x4, in a 4x4, as long as they can do a quilt square, whether it be glass or whether it be whatever, I want it to be on our trail. That's the goal. I want to incorporate other people, other artists. I wish we could do fabric, but it's just outdoors. It's just probably impossible. But canvas, you could do canvas though. Yep, absolutely, stretch canvas. Anybody else? Yes.
Do you have an idea of the price range of your pieces?
Sure. The 1x1s, they're $65. The 2x2s are $275, and then anything above that, I just kind of price accordingly. Because the 3x3s really throw me off because of the scale. If you're going to 8, like a 10-inch block or something, and you try to do a 3-foot by 3-foot piece, it takes me a while to kind of figure all that out. But as long as we stay in the evens, like ones or not, I mean, of course, everything's based around 12 or so, 8, 10, 12. Then you get into 2x2s, that's easy. You just kind of double it if you can. But then you get into like 3x3, it throws me for a loop, so I have to do a little bit. A 9 patch. Oh, there you go. That's why I come and talk to you guys, because I'll learn. I'm all ears. I'll tell you, I did. So basically right now I just work off commission only. I don't really put out anything like that I've already have to sell. I just I take commission. That keeps me pretty busy, because like I said, I work full time. So I have my shop in the back of the house, and I spend a minimum of an hour every night in my shop after work. I just come right home from work, and I go into the shop, and I do something, whatever, for at least an hour. And then my son's got all his devices all set up in my shop, so he hangs out there with me, and he does whatever he does. And if he wants to tack some stuff, he's getting old enough to where he can actually do it himself. And so. I could, but it would take away from the. It would take away from the. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to mass produce though. I know a guy actually with a laser table that he talked to me about getting, just getting like 2-inch triangle, 3-inch triangle, 4-inch triangle, whatever, just a bunch of those, and they would have cost me next to nothing to do that. But I can't go there. I have to. If I can't do it by hand, it's not the Steel Quilt Company. So, and that's going to limit me, to where how many pieces I can do, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not so much worried about the money per se as I am about just being able to do what I want to do for a living. So, I mean, I've been approached by a magazine, several magazines that, like mail order magazines that do like gift shops. They supply gift shops and things, and they wanted me to do 10 of each pattern, 5 patterns, and they'd be exclusive, which there's thousands of patterns. So I mean, you could do that easily, but I just couldn't do that. I mean, I just didn't want to.
Can we see the back of one of these that you have up?
Sure.
Because I'm looking for a label. I want to make sure your name's on it. There you go. Oh, no, your name's not on there.
Yeah, the N is my name.
Okay.
That's always been my process. For some reason, I just wanted a very simple something, and I just do a big N, and then the top number is the piece number, and the bottom is the year.
And I
So.
guess the pattern. I would like to purchase that one if that's possible.
Absolutely. It's right here. Suni, my assistant Suni, will definitely take care of you on that. Well, we can turn it into an auction process if you want to. I mean, I'm all for that. Yes. Mother Hubbard. Yeah, you actually get first. I guess since I didn't know that before, so I guess if you're claiming that one, but you can have your. I wouldn't have say I was looking for somebody that was like motherly. There, Wandering Foot. There it is. Wandering Foot. Actually, I have that pattern in a 2x2, and then that piece, not that piece, but another one that I've already got done. Those are going to Seattle. For some reason, Seattle is like a strong point for me. So I'm trying to plan a trip to go to Seattle and go on a speaking tour.
Some of the craft shows or?
I don't do shows. Yeah, the reason why is because I just don't have pieces ready for them. It's hard to have inventory if being commission only, and maybe one day I probably need to visit that a little bit more, but I don't. That's not.
How did Seattle hear about you?
Well, a lady come through. Her name is Louise Wackerman, and she's a Feeling Crafty, I think is her blog on Facebook. I'm Feeling Crafty. And she's from South Alabama. She went to camp in Mentone as a girl, is why she knows Northeast Alabama. I used to work out of the big mill. The old mill is like the big W.B. Davis mill, old hosiery mill in Fort Payne. It's now an antique store. Anyway, I used to work out of the back of it, and she had come through Fort Payne on their one out of every 5 years that they actually drive and come back to Mentone and then go back to Seattle. And she done a blog. We done a partnership. I sent her a piece, 1x1, and she did a giveaway. And she has like 4,000 or 5,000 followers on her blog or whatever. And most of them I think are fairly local in that area. And that was the first exposure I'd ever gotten. And it really, for some reason, Seattle's just a hot spot right now. I've sent last year I sent 8 pieces to that area, not necessarily Seattle, just Seattle, but in that area. So. But, I've been in American Quilter magazine, January 2014 issue, and then, of course, the Sewing with Nancy show come out September the 1st of last year. And I'm actually in rotation now in Alabama Public Television. I'm not just on Saturday morning on Sewing with Nancy now. It's actually, I guess they've gotten so many requests that it's actually in syndication now to where it's rolling through the week. Because I used to always know whenever the show was on, because on Saturdays I'd get likes and I'd get comments, about Saturday morning. And now it's actually coming up on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. So it's actually in rotation now. So it's not just a Sewing with Nancy thing. It's now Alabama Public Television is actually taking it over. So. Thank you. Thanks.
And a booth space isn't that expensive and it's interested.
Okay.
Just want to do that again, that's inventory.